At the networking event, designed to deepen camaraderie between companies, Mr. Robert spotted my wife and me. Without hesitation, he began with an unbelievable remark. "We don't have seats arranged for you guys. Subcontractors should head back home." Then, "Can you call the president right away?" My wife, Jessica, retorted immediately, leaving Mr. Robert with his mouth agape in surprise. "Huh? It's impossible to call our busy president just for subcontractors. We can find a replacement for you anytime. If you can't call the president, we'll be leaving then," as Jessica grabbed my arm and we headed for the exit. President Jason, the president of the contracting company, appeared upon hearing what had happened. His face turned pale and eventually, he began to tremble violently. "I'm Smith, a 42-year-old living happily with my beloved wife, Jessica. I run a manufacturing factory that produces mechanical parts, which was originally owned by my father-in-law. I met Jessica during our college days. Having been fascinated by machinery since childhood, I pursued mechanical engineering in college. I was burning with youthful hope in my heart, wanting to create something new that would shape the society of the future. However, reality wasn't as straightforward, with experiments mostly ending in struggles. Despite feeling defeated, wondering if this was the extent of my capabilities after coming all the way from the countryside, I persevered through countless experiments. Just when I thought it was impossible and faced difficulties repeatedly, feeling utterly lost, it was Jessica who came to my side. Seeing me struggle with an experiment, she quickly solved the problem and told me, "Smith, you were almost there in solving a problem. But the difference between you and me is whether or not we believe it can definitely be done." With a smile, Jessica completely captivated my heart. Believing that something can be done versus giving up, thinking it's possible changes the outcome. Jessica taught me that, and since then I've never thrown in the towel but continued to work on everything until the very end. The result was a strong mentality that even without much basis or experience, if I gave it my all, things would somehow work out. The power to persevere to the end, telling myself that it must somehow work out, became a significant strength in overcoming various challenges in life, and Jessica herself possessed that vitality. One day, she quietly said to me, "I have a dream." "A dream?" I asked, unable to anticipate her response, to which Jessica firmly nodded. "To make my father's factory the best in the States." In the end, Jessica and I continued our university life as good friends. After graduation, I got a job at a local machinery manufacturing plant. I resonated with the attitude of pursuing more precise and advanced technology while conducting technical research there. I reunited with my college classmate Jessica. To my surprise, the factory was managed by Jessica's father. As I tried my best to get accustomed to the job quickly, the president of the factory, Jessica's father, approached me. "So, you're the new guy. I've heard so much about you. You're very enthusiastic about your work, I hear." "Thank you. I'm just happy to be working with machinery every day." I passionately shared my love for manufacturing with the president. I spoke about the expertise and knowledge I had gained in university, and the possible future prospects of the manufacturing industry in the States. Looking back, I realized I had such a big mouth, but the president listened without interrupting, showing genuine interest. "I'm glad to have a passionate young person like you join our company. How about it? Want to learn even more?" After making that proposal, the president began to keep me close, guiding me through the intricacies of the job. Thus, I started receiving direct job training from the president himself. "Smith, you didn't have a girlfriend, right?" "No, not at the moment." One day, when the president suddenly asked me, the first thing that flashed through my mind was Jessica's smiling face from our college days. "How about my Jessica, then? She's about your age and knows the factory work well." And so, our relationship, which I had thought would remain platonic forever, slowly progressed, and after about 2 years of dating, we got married. United in our goal to make her father's factory the best in the States, we embarked on a happy married life. During this time, her father suddenly fell ill. Fortunately, I was nearby and was able to call an ambulance immediately to take him to the hospital. Though he managed to pull through, his already weak heart had taken a toll, leaving him considerably weakened. I've caused you all a lot of worry, but I've seen my daughter in her wedding dress, and a successor for the factory has been found. Honestly, I have no regrets, he said, lying in the white hospital bed, looking pale. Of course, we weren't ready to accept that. It was too early for him to say he was satisfied, we thought. From there on, together with Jessica and the entire factory team, we worked frantically to manage the factory until her father could return. Encouraged by our combined effort to uphold his business, he made a recovery and was able to return to the factory 3 months later. But even though he had recovered, there was always the uncertainty of when he might falter again. Considering his own health issues, he asked me to officially take over the factory while he was still functional. I had been working there and had learned how to manage from him, but still, the initial period was quite challenging. Apparently, I must have looked pretty worn out when I got home, causing Jessica to worry. "Are you okay? Not overdoing it? It's tough, but I want to live up to your dad's expectations. Plus, I don't want to be underestimated just because I'm a young manager. So, I want to study up now." Indeed, after the transition from her father to me, there were some difficult clients who seemed to test our resolve. Yet, with Jessica's support and her father's trust, I've been able to keep pushing forward. Before we knew it, 2 years had passed, and just as I was getting the hang of managing, we discovered Jessica was pregnant. We named our son, who was born without complications, Leo. Holding Leo, my father-in-law couldn't help but shed tears of joy. A man moved to tears, seeing my father-in-law, Jessica, and our newborn son Leo together as 3 generations. Made me naturally smile too. The birth of my precious son has motivated me even more. Thanks to this, I became even more dedicated to my work, discovering my own way of doing things different from my father-in-law's, and overcoming various challenges that followed. About a decade later, I was puzzled when I heard that Mr. John, the manager of one of our major contractors, had been transferred. It was odd timing, and Mr. John had never mentioned his reassignment. Concerned about what had happened to Mr. John, I inquired with someone from his office about his recent reassignment, only to learn that he had apparently been fired. I was shocked at the thought of what kind of mistake he must have made, especially since no details were disclosed, which surprised me even more. But, being from a subcontractor, I couldn't find out more than that, so all I could do was wait for the new manager to take over. I heard the new manager's name was Mr. Robert, and he's about my age. He's reputed to be an elite graduate from a prestigious university, so I braced myself for a long-term relationship. Although I was truly grateful to Mr. John for all his help, I felt a mix of sadness and the necessity to first pay a visit to greet the new manager. After I informed his office of my planned courtesy visit to the new manager, I thought my father-in-law should be aware of this matter involving Mr. John. So that's what happened. "I'll check on it from my end too, so you just focus on the factory work," he said, with a complexity in his expression I had never seen before. This situation took a turn the next day while giving work instructions at the factory, as usual, and making my rounds. A man I didn't recognize appeared, wondering. As we mingled at the networking event aimed at fostering camaraderie among companies, Mr. Roberts' gaze quickly fixed on my wife and me. Without a hint of cordiality, he launched into an unbelievable remark. "We haven't arranged seats for you guys. Subcontractors should head back home. Can you call the president right away?" My wife, Jessica retorted without missing a beat, leaving Mr. Robert open-mouthed in surprise. Huh? It's impossible to call our busy president just for subcontractors. We can find a replacement for you anytime. If you can't call the president, we'll be leaving then, Jessica declared, taking my arm as we made our way to the exit. At that moment, President Jason, the president of the contracting company, emerged, having overheard the exchange. His complexion paled, and he soon began to tremble with intensity. Filled with hope and the ambition to innovate for the future, I faced reality's harshness, my experiments often ending in failure. Feeling overwhelmed and questioning my path, Jessica stood by my side. She not only solved the problem at hand but also taught me an invaluable lesson. The difference between success and failure often lies in our belief in the possibility of success. Jessica's unwavering support and her dream to elevate her father's factory to unparalleled heights became our shared vision. Fast forward, after graduation, I secured a position at a local machinery manufacturing plant, where I discovered Jessica's father was the president. Impressed by my passion, he took me under his wing, offering direct mentorship. This relationship blossomed beyond professional boundaries, leading to Jessica and I transitioning from friends to life partners. United in our mission, we embarked on a fulfilling married life. Tragedy struck when her father fell ill. His hospitalization and subsequent frailty pushed us to the forefront of the factory's operations. Despite his weakened state, he expressed contentment in seeing his daughter married and the factory under capable stewardship. His recovery, bolstered by our collective effort, marked a new chapter for the factory, with me officially at the helm. Navigating the challenges of leadership, Jessica's pregnancy brought a new wave of motivation. Our son, Leo, symbolized the continuation of our legacy, bringing immense joy and determination to further the factory's success. The factory's journey took an unexpected turn with the transfer of Mr. John, a supportive manager from one of our major contractors, and the introduction of Mr. Robert. This new manager, known for his prestigious educational background, brought a wave of discomfort and tension, unlike any we had experienced with his predecessor. Robert's disdain was palpable from our first encounter. Despite his condescending attitude, a surprising connection between him and Jessica came to light, revealing a past intertwined with personal grievances. Despite the challenges he presented, our focus remained on a significant project pivotal to the factory's future. Robert's unprofessional conduct, culminating in a confrontational networking event, tested our resolve. Yet, it was President Jason's intervention that reaffirmed the value of our work and our partnership with the factory. This incident not only highlighted the importance of perseverance and belief in one's vision, but also underscored the strength found in unity and shared goals. In the face of adversity and with the support of my wife and the factory team, we continued to navigate the complexities of the industry. Our commitment to innovation, quality, and the legacy of Jessica's father's factory remains unwavering, as we look towards a future filled with promise and continued success. I offered him a forced smile. "Excuse me, I need to greet some other people." "I'm not done talking to you yet," he retorted. We tried to dodge Mr. Robert, but he seemed determined not to let us go easily. Caught in a difficult situation, Mr. Robert approached me, looking down with an ugly smirk, and declared, "There's no seat prepared for you guys. Subcontractors should head home." "Then could you call the president right now?" Jessica retorted on the spot, leaving Mr. Robert gaping with wide eyes. "Huh? There's no way I can call the busy president just for a small subcontractor. There are plenty of others to take your place." "You're saying you can't call the president? Then we'll have to step down from the project." With that, Jessica took my arm, and we started heading for the exit. Mr. Robert, looking smug as if he had successfully sent us packing, showed no sign of wanting to stop us. That's when it happened. "Smith!" The one who called out to me with a puzzled look was President Jason, the president of the contracting company. I stopped in my tracks and offered a handshake to President Jason. "President Jason, you've arrived early. I heard you were coming, so I thought I'd drop by to catch up with you and ask you about his updates." His likely referred to my father-in-law. I knew that my father-in-law and President Jason had been acquaintances for over 30 years since the establishment of the company, but since my father-in-law fell and I took over, the opportunities to meet had dwindled. "But why are you leaving? The networking event is just about to start." Actually, I explained everything to President Jason. Despite thinking it might be futile, I wasn't particularly close to President Jason, and after all, I was just a subcontractor. It wouldn't have been surprising if he had just laughed it off. But I was hoping for the long-standing friendship between him and my father-in-law to make a difference. As I spoke, President Jason's face turned pale, and he began to tremble. "I'm so sorry, this is entirely Robert's fault. I'll discipline him in a way that satisfies you. Please don't leave." President Jason's desperate attempt to keep us there surprised not only us. "What are you doing, President? These two are just a low-level small subcontractor who lack any respect for their client companies." "And what are you talking about? Haven't you read the documents for this project?" Mr. Robert, who had been laughing and talking, was immediately struck by President Jason's sharp response. He clearly hadn't anticipated being scolded himself. Leaving a gaping Mr. Robert behind, President Jason clung to my hand. "Smith, you can do as you please, and I won't hold you responsible. So please continue with the project. Then I'll take you up on that offer." I waited until President Jason nodded firmly. "What about the networking event then?" "We'll be leaving for today. We need to discuss our strategy, including the possible diversion." At my words, President Jason looked down, clearly disappointed. "I'm really sorry about this whole situation." Once again, we shook hands with President Jason. Jessica and I finally left the venue. As we were leaving, President Jason handed me a small note. On it was the name and phone number of the former manager, Mr. John. I decided to call this number as soon as we got home. Of course, I also had to report this incident to my father-in-law. As we hurried away, the sound of Mr. Robert being sternly reprimanded echoed behind us. The next day, Mr. Robert stormed into my factory, face red with anger. "Hey, bring out Smith. What's the meaning of this? Come out and explain." As soon as he entered the factory, Mr. Robert started yelling. After I received a call informing me that Mr. Robert was at the factory, I met with him in the reception room, where his face was twitching with rage. "What do you mean the project can't proceed without your factory's parts? That information was detailed in the documents beforehand. You decided we were unnecessary and sent us away after reading those, right?" Surprised by my retort, Mr. Robert fell silent. Being silenced by just one comeback seemed to reveal his fragility more than expected. "If that's all you had to say, could you please leave?" I pointed towards the exit, but Mr. Robert weakly shook his head. "Listen, I was told by the president. Is it true you're not participating in this project? Our president and your former president are good friends, right? Think it over." After discussing with the former president, we decided to terminate this contract. "There are plenty of other subcontractors like us, aren't there?" At my words, Mr. Robert turned pale and started sweating profusely. I knew exactly why he was so desperate. Without our factory, the project itself wouldn't stand a chance. The project was actually predicated on using a product for which I hold a patent. The difference in management direction I took from my father-in-law was acquiring that patent. Besides managing the factory daily, I had been working on prototypes of a product. I started researching in college with Jessica's help, who studied with me at the same university. It took us 2 years to finally succeed in its development. Our unique patented product not only contributed to the factory's profits but also led to an upward trend in our financial situation. Hearing about our reputation, this project was put together. In other words, without our product, the large project would go back to the drawing board. Mr. Robert, despite being a participant in the project, was apparently unaware of the situation. Had he thoroughly read the documentation, he would have understood the importance of our factory, but he probably skipped over it, thinking it was just another simple job because we were subcontractors. Don't you have any sense of responsibility? If this project fails, what will you do? If it comes to that, I suppose I'd have to take responsibility. But no worries, we've already signed with another company. Mr. Robert gasped for air and widened his eyes at my words. I almost burst out laughing, seeing his expression. Actually, on the day of the networking event, I called the contact number President Jason gave me for Mr. John. Then I found out Mr. John had started a new company. Actually, I'm receiving support from President Jason. Would you consider signing a contract with us? Mr. John, who reached out to us for a contract, kindly explained what had happened when he left his previous job. It turns out Mr. Robert had been habitually harassed by Mr. John, and he made an initial report of such misconduct to the HR. However, a faction within the company that favored Mr. Robert, led by a vice president, squashed Mr. John's complaints. Thinking he could no longer stand it, Mr. John decided to resign. When he submitted his resignation, President Jason approached him and had already established a new company as a subsidiary. President Jason too was fed up with the vice president's faction and their schemes, but their influence reached deep into the company core, making it difficult for even the president to turn things around. So, they gradually transferred talented employees like Mr. John to the subsidiary. In light of the current situation, President Jason endorsed my factory, which produces indispensable parts, to Mr. John's company. I decided to contract with Mr. John's company moving forward. Explaining this, Mr. Robert turned red with rage. Are you kidding me? If this project isn't realized, then we're losing millions. Just sign a contract with us, quick! But, Mr. Robert, you were the one who discarded us, right? We've already signed a contract with another company that is participating in the project with a new company, so it's impossible to contract with you now. I kept firmly refusing Mr. Robert each time he persistently pleaded with me. After about 30 minutes of this back and forth, Mr. Robert finally realized it was pointless and slumped to his knees. We watched Mr. Robert walk away from the factory with a slouched back, and then we returned to our usual work. Months later, President Jason visited our factory. Since that incident, he has been working on restructuring the company to counter the vice president's faction, including Mr. Robert. I've really caused you a lot of trouble this time. How can I possibly make it up to you? He said with an exhausted face to me. President Jason then began to talk about the aftermath. Allegedly, Mr. Robert was considered competent initially but began to act recklessly as soon as he started receiving favor from the vice president. Moreover, before he was involved with our incident, he had caused similar disturbances in various departments. However, because of his strong connection with the vice president, no one dared to correct him. As a result, Mr. Robert developed the mistaken confidence that, due to his importance, he could act however he wished. This led him to unnecessarily involve us in trouble at the networking event, subcontractors he disliked. Even after being admonished by the president, Mr. Robert showed no sign of remorse. I was just doing my job the way I see fit. There are plenty of factories out there, so it doesn't matter how I treat them, he defiantly stated. This attitude finally angered the usually mild-mannered President Jason, resulting in Mr. Robert being transferred to another department. It may sound like an excuse, But I was on a long-term business trip abroad when Mr. Robert was appointed manager. I received reports but judged only based on performance numbers, failing to grasp his personality, which led to this trouble, President Jason explained, apologizing again. Some time later, I received a call from an acquaintance at another company, informing me that Mr. Robert had resigned. Though he avoided being fired after the vice president faced numerous allegations and resigned, the story somehow leaked, subjecting him to cold stares from everyone in the company. Moreover, he was transferred to a section where he is tasked to compile the company's history, essentially a menial job with no significant responsibilities. Obviously, it's a task to gently kick him out. Feeling unable to endure such a position, Mr. Robert voluntarily resigned. He might have had a difficult personality, but he was smart, Jessica commented upon hearing the news, acknowledging Mr. Robert's capabilities. He had made significant achievements to be recognized as a manager by President Jason, at least on paper. However, his promotion led to overconfidence, culminating in this debacle. Perhaps it was my presence that spurred his actions, I speculated. It turns out Mr. Robert, who was a classmate of Jessica's in high school, had feelings for her. In his misguided attempt to gain her attention, he repeatedly demeaned a factory owned by Jessica's father, ultimately causing Jessica to detest him. I told him, "Don't ever talk to me again. I don't even want you near me," she recalled, marking the end of their relationship. Just as Jessica declared, there was no contact from Mr. Robert after high school graduation. Yet, after becoming a professional and learning that his company did business with Jessica's factory, he, filled with confidence from his position as a manager, tried to reach out to her, but she was already married to me, with a grade school child, which probably threw off his expectations. It's really childish and annoying that he would harass you out of jealousy. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble," Jessica said, apologizing with her hands together. But of course, I wasn't mad at all. Instead, I felt reassured by Jessica's decisive handling of the situation, feeling strong that together we could overcome anything the future might hold for the factory. Months later, after Mr. Robert resigned, reputedly he was struggling to find new employment due to the rumors of this debacle. Facing rejection after rejection, with his savings depleted and forced out of his home, Mr. Robert fell into poverty, working day labor jobs while in debt to cover living expenses. Juggling multiple jobs but having to bow to younger supervisors bruised his pride. Eventually, unable to hold down any job for long, he kept moving from one job to another. Now, with any small amount of money he gets, he spends his days drowning in cheap liquor, drawing complaints from other residents in his low-cost apartment. The day he hits rock bottom might not be far off. On the other hand, I am still working with my factory team as an owner. Our relationship with a new company led by Mr. John is flourishing, engaging in ambitious dealings that lead us satisfied. President Jason's company is slowly returning to a healthy state. We look forward to the day we can resume our transactions, a hope shared with my father-in-law. Furthermore, with Leo becoming a middle schooler and gaining independence, Jessica has more time to help out at the factory. For my family and the precious factory, I am committed to doing all I can, confident that together we can face any new challenges. Even if new problems arise in the future, I'm sure we can overcome them with everyone's support. Someday, we'll achieve Jessica's dream of making this factory the best in the States. With this hope in my heart, I step into the factory today, believing that if we tackle it with a mindset that we can do it, success will surely follow. Thanks for watching and see you in the next story.